So Barry, can you comprehend the fact that Stephanie Lesher is on our show today?
Oh, forget it.
I know, right? I mean, we don't know her that well, but she's a friend of David Hooper, so that means something, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
It does. I know it. All right, well, let's get this party started real quick. Ready? Oh, I missed the grunt. Oh! Yes, welcome everyone to the Podcast Engineering Show. I literally mistimed the grunt. It's actually because I don't keep my headphones very loud at all because I don't want them to bleed through and all that. Plus, I want to, when I'm 85 years old, I want to be able to hear well. So anyway, this is the Podcast Engineering Show. I'm happy you're here. We literally talk to engineers, producers, podcasters, and today, a radio producer about how they're producing audio. And what we do is we get really technical. This is not just like, plug in your USB mic and talk, and that's how you podcast. Like, no, we go deep into everything with audio production, and I'm happy to do it. I have a background in audio engineering in the music business, and since I entered podcasting about 9 years ago now, I've noticed a huge lack of audio skills in the podcasting world, and that's why this show can help, because anyone, whether you're a podcaster or a podcast editor, maybe you have clients, whoever you are, if you're producing any audio, you'll learn a lot here. And of course, I believe in you that you can produce really good sounding audio, even if you're not a professional engineer. You really can. Of course, I run Podcast Engineering School. The next semester starts in April, and we do a semester every quarter. So that's Podcast Engineering School. Now we have about 75 alumni, graduates. So we're starting. Maybe we should start like a secret society, Stephanie. What do you think with the graduates of my school?
I think that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, a little maybe creepy. I don't know. But anyway, Stephanie Lesher is here. You heard her voice. She's a production manager at WRLT Lightning 100 in Nashville.
That's me.
Yeah, and you're a friend of David Hooper, and you actually work with David Hooper on the show Music Business Radio, which is a weekly radio show.
I have the pleasure of recording and editing the David Hooper.
That is great. So if he ever ticks you off, you can just cut out half of a word, make him sound like an idiot. No?
Yeah, or pull out some of the bloopers I've got hidden away.
Oh, wait a second. You need to start a Patreon for that, man. People will pay for David Hooper bloopers. Dude, come on.
And it rhymes. It sells itself.
We should just stop recording this episode. We need to get that set up immediately, Stephanie.
All right, we know what we're doing after this.
David Hooper, the legend, the Nashville legend. So anyway, Stephanie, I'm happy to have you on the show. And so you did explain to me earlier that, for Music Business Radio, the show, it's a radio show. Mm-hmm. And it's available on the website, but it's not technically a podcast because it's not going through a podcast feed and all that, right?
Right. That is, other than that, it is basically podcast style, but just not available on iTunes or Spotify or any of the fun stuff.
Right. And I assume that's because of the radio station, right? They want to own the rights, exclusive rights to that show and all that, right? Is that why?
It's actually because we put a lot of music in the show, and we have yet to figure out how to navigate the licensing of that. We would love to have it up on iTunes. We just haven't quite figured out the legal parts of that yet.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone has figured that out, actually, Stephanie, because that's some people in the podcasting space, even today, people are like, how can I play music? How can I play music? Is it royalty free, or just how do we get things cleared? And it's just muddy waters, and so no one's doing it, actually.
I know. It just seems like everyone's a little too afraid to try, and we are part of that club, so.
Yeah, well, you might not know this, but people nowadays, that Spotify and Apple Podcasts, they're really coming down even harder on any of that stuff. So it was never a good idea. The only reason some people got away with it a little bit was because their show had 14 listeners. But if a decent number of people are listening to a show and then these companies find out that you're playing copywritten music on the show, you literally get banned immediately, and it's not good. So it's
Yeah, no one wants that.
Never recommended. So, all right, well, let's do the speed round. So, as everyone knows, the speed round in about a minute or so, just quickly overview your entire production process, starting from, recording the audio, maybe just talk about, just name the equipment you might be using or who's involved, and then how, maybe just mention what software you're assembling everything into, and then mixing, and then when you're done mixing, where do you send the file and all that? So just give us the overview, Stephanie.
All right. So brief overview is we actually do everything locally, unlike a lot of podcasts. So we record everything at the radio station in Nashville with me recording, David Hooper hosting, and then we've got Gary Crane, who's the VP of programming at the radio station and also produces the show. So he's in there kind of directing everything.
Nice.
Recording through an Avid Mbox with some RE20s into Pro Tools, and we just do everything in one foul swoop. Then everyone else leaves, and I sit down and edit the whole thing and add in any music we need, do all my post-production, then put that into our database of stuff that plays on air on the radio, and I also upload it to Mixcloud and then put it on our website.
Okay. Wow. That was one of the best speed rounds we've had, actually.
I was trying to time myself.
Thank you for that. Because actually, and I don't mind this, but we've actually had speed rounds that lasted like 20 minutes.
No, timing is very important in radio. I know a minute.
Oh, that's right. So do you ever get on the air, or you're always in the background?
I sometimes do. I'm never alone, but I'll sometimes, pop on the morning show with the hosts and talk about some music coming out or something fun like that. But in general, I'm a background person.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in a lot of commercials though, because that's the other part of my job is I make a lot of the commercials that play on our station.
Okay. So you use your voice from time to time?
Yes, I do.
So, okay, so let's say you're at the station and you're getting ready to record. Now, of course, David Hooper's there. And so is it a radio studio that's built for like live on air stuff? Or is it like a back room somewhere?
It's a back room. It's my office, which literally used to be a closet at one point.
Interesting.
So it's genuinely just a couple people in some chairs, and I set up mics on stands just in the room. We're all just sitting together, kind of facing each other. We do have a more formal on-air studio that they use for like the actual live radio, but for almost everything I do, we're just in this quasi closet.
Okay. So you got the RE20s in there on stands, and then
Yep.
So how many? It's just David and I'm sorry, I forgot a co-host.
Gary Crane, he's a producer, so just sort of directing the whole thing, but not on mic.
Okay, and so it's just David Hooper solo, really.
Just David Hooper, and then we always have a guest. Yeah, so David Hooper and at least one guest, sometimes more than one.
So are the guests in the room also?
Yes. Yeah, they come in with us.
So they're in the room. Okay, so you got 2 live mics in the room, basically.
Yep. Yeah. At least. Sometimes more. Depends.
Okay. So then you got 2 RE20s, and you're running it through, you said, an Avid Mbox.
Yes.
Into so the Avid Mbox, I think that's an interface. What kind of interface is it?
Just like your
how many
typical
inputs and stuff?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. There's 4 inputs. And then actually there's probably technically more than 4, but there's 4 for microphones that have their own preamps.
Got it.
So we've got up to 4 mics at a time going in there, and then running everything into Pro Tools 10.
Pro Tools 10.
Yes.
Is that the latest one? I don't know.
No, we're on 12 now, but at work I've got 10.
Okay.
Which does the trick. The only thing it's missing is offline bounce, which would be nice, but it's not totally necessary.
Okay, offline bounce. So my listeners have probably never heard about that, or they may have never heard about that. So describe what that means, offline bounce versus online bounce or whatever.
Yeah, so Pro Tools up until pretty recently did not have offline bounce. So anytime you're bouncing down any file, so you have multiple tracks that you're trying to bounce down to like a stereo file, you have to do the whole thing in real time. So if you have an hour-long show, it takes an hour to bounce it down to a stereo.
Right, and by the way, the word bounce you're using is some DAWs call it render, some call it other names for it, mix down, whatever.
Right.
But bounce is what Pro Tools calls it.
Right, yes. So offline bounce, which is now a thing, would allow it to kind of do it in the background, so it happens way faster than real time. So your hour-long show might only take, a minute or so, which is super convenient, but, maybe a bad habit because you can't listen back and make sure you didn't miss anything.
Interesting. Yeah, and I wonder if do you know if because I've never asked a Pro Tools person about this, like is the offline bounce does the quality of the mix end up being the same as a real-time bounce or is it less quality?
I've had this conversation with people before, and I think the short answer that I believe is you're really not going to hear a difference.
Okay.
I don't know in practice if you were to really, really get detailed with it, there probably is some sort of difference, but I don't think it's anything you can hear.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because all the other DAWs, like especially, all the DAWs that podcasters use and podcast producers and stuff, nothing happens in real time. It always does the offline bounce thing and bounces it down, much faster than real time. So
yeah. Yes, that it definitely saves a lot of time when you've got hour-long shows to do.
Right. Okay, so you got the RE20s plugged into the Avid Mbox, and so you're not using any EQ or compression to tape at all, right?
No, not going in.
Okay, and so then you just got to be careful of the levels, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I record everything pretty, not excessively low, but I'm not trying to get the maxed out volume on my way in anyway.
Got it. And what resolution are you recording in?
44:1. Oh, sorry, that's and then 16-bit. Yeah, sorry.
16?
44:1 and 16. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, I'm trying to write things down to take notes, and it's I am the worst typer. In fact, we did the Podcasters Lounge last night, and someone was like, "Hey, can you look this up?" And I typed something into Google, and then I showed the screen to the whole stream, and it
just
was
garbled mess.
Oh, it was you could hardly tell what I meant to type. It was terrible. Anyway, okay, so 44:1 16-bit, and you're recording it into Pro Tools 10, and then so how is David's performance with the guest and all that? Are there a lot of starts and stops, or does David cruise through the whole thing?
There's a few, but he's generally pretty smooth, and then occasionally gets hung up. I'm sure you know this. Hung up trying to say the same sentence over and over again.
Oh,
just
yeah,
especially on names. But no,
okay.
He's good. David's a pro.
Okay, and then you also have to. So when a guest comes in and sits down, what do you, as far as training them on how to speak into a mic and how to sit there and everything? How do you train them when they come in?
I don't typically have to do too much. I tell them about how far away they need to be from the mic.
Which is?
Just, not kissing it, but relatively as close as you comfortably can is usually what I say without touching it.
Okay.
At least for our RE20s. And our RE20s, I have, I should have said this, have a foam windscreen on them.
Okay.
So that kind of, keeps them a little farther away and gets those pops out. But I tell them that. I tell them to just speak comfortably and I'll adjust to them.
Got it. Yeah. Did you ever have someone who, when you do the sound check, you're like, okay, can you just talk for just, tell us what you had for breakfast? And they're like, I had for breakfast and and they're almost whispering. And then you start the show and they're like, hey, how you doing?
Oh, all the time. But then I realized that's sort of what I did to you when we started this. So I get it, I guess.
Well, not really. Yeah, to a lesser degree. To a very small degree, actually. That wasn't a big deal. In fact, where you had it the first time was probably good. So that's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not, on this end of it very often, so it's kind of funny to be on the guest end.
All right. So you record the audio, and like, how long is a final episode of that show after you've edited it and everything?
So it ends up being about, this sounds so strangely specific, but it ends up being about 54 minutes. Because the way it works, since it does originally air on our radio station, it airs in 13-minute segments with commercial breaks in between. So I edit it to 4 13-minute segments, which ends up being in total like 53, 54 minutes. We can be a little bit loose with that 1 minute, but...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the really interesting difference between, a typical podcast and the radio show is the timing really matters.
Yeah, so you must be running a clock there when you're recording.
Yes, we've got a big counter up, and we cap every section off. I'll let them run over about a minute and a half because I can, edit things out as I need to, but we'll cap it out around 13 or 14 minutes, and then we take a short little break in between each section and then pick it back up.
So, and that's where David Hooper gets to flex his DJ hosting muscles when he's like, all right, well, we're talking with Joe Smith and we're going to take a short break. We're going to be back in a minute.
Yes, exactly. He gets to do his intros and outros in his most professional DJ voice.
And we're back with Joe Smith. I've actually never heard, music business radio. How have I never heard that?
There's just too many things out there to listen to. I get it. I really do.
But I really want to hear David. Now I want to hear it. I want to hear David Hooper.
Musicbusinessradio.com. It's all up there.
And I want to hear David Hooper bloopers.
Well, yeah, those are hidden away. Those I'll break out for a special occasion sometime.
I just wanted to say it again, really.
David Hooper bloopers.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that again. I'll probably say it again later, but okay. So, all right. So you're doing the 4 segments, and you let them go over a little because you can sort of edit it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it all depends on the host whether they respect that clock, right? Because have you ever worked with a host who they might see the clock, but they don't know how to end it up, and they end up going way over?
Yeah, David's the only show host I've ever worked with, and I do some other things around the station. So I'll record other interviews that are, more one-off things that are going to go on air. And for those, people do they're a lot looser with the timing, and I end up having to chop 5 minutes of material out of a 10-minute interview, which gets challenging.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's rough.
But David's very respectful of the time.
Okay. So then you record everything, and so you record everything as one big long track, or two big long tracks. And so when you bring it into Pro Tools and you're going to do the editing and add music and stuff, obviously you're chopping it up into 4 segments, like you said, 4 13-minute segments.
Yes.
Do you keep them all in one Pro Tools session?
I do. Yeah, I just have them all right next to each other. And
how much are you adding the music that comes in and fades out at the end and all that?
Yep. So, sometimes David will intro a specific song. He'll be like, okay, and up next not up next, that was bad, but they'll be talking. He'll be like, all right, well, let's go out of this section with blah, blah, blah by the Everly Brothers. And then I'll in the back end put that in. Other times, since we have bands come in and be on the show, I'll actually record them live in our studio ahead of time. And then we do the interview and kind of act as if they're playing it in that moment, and then I'll put it in later. So it's still
cool.
A live performance. It's just not, in the middle of the interview.
Interesting. That is pretty cool.
And then other times I'll just add in, if they're talking about a song in the interview, I'll sometimes just add it in, as people do underneath them talking without David introing it, just kind of if it seems to fit there.
Right. And you make those decisions?
Yeah, I do.
Cool.
I kind of do a lot of the editorial decisions on the back end. It's my favorite part of the show, honestly. My favorite part of working on it.
You should, next time you record with David Hooper, you should be like, okay, we need to talk about production, David. I really want you to In this episode, I want you to go for a Mexican accent with your voice. I really want you to
No, he makes fun of me when I tell him like, you need to say that again. He thinks it's funny, but I mean he'll do it, but he definitely teases me.
Oh, is it ever just you and him without a guest?
No, our show is basically based all around the guest.
Okay,
so it's never just the two of us.
It's so funny. I just realized I'm coming to Nashville this spring twice, and David actually we were trying to figure out a way for me to come by there. But anyway,
yeah, you got to come by.
Yeah, I think on my first trip to Nashville, I don't think it's going to happen for various reasons, but the second trip I'm not sure of yet. But the other thing I was thinking about was I should start writing some songs, and then David Hooper and you could play my song in the show.
Yeah. Write some songs, come on Music Business Radio. We'll make you part of the industry.
I need to. All right, I'm going to write some songs. Me and Barry.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We're just chilling. Barry, am I a good singer?
No way. You crazy?
I know, dude. I'm sorry. Barry, what about... Well, never mind. Forget it. I can't sing.
I like the guest vocals by Barry.
Yeah. So Barry, wait, hold on. I got to switch screens here. I mean, I got to look at Barry. Barry, what do you think of that transition?
It's a mess.
It's a mess. And also, Barry, what is your, this is a show about audio production. So what is your favorite area of the frequency spectrum, Barry?
The bottom.
All right. I know. People make fun of me. They're like, "You're the only person who plays the same I don't play the same clips every episode, obviously, but they're like 160 something episodes you played the same clips."
Well, you got to recycle them eventually.
Well, here's my response. It's not. What do you mean clips? Barry's right here.
Oh, yeah, sorry, of course. I didn't mean to be disrespectful to Barry.
Right? All right, so you bring everything into Pro Tools, you chop it up into the 4 sections, and you add the music. And
yes, well,
so
actually,
what else?
before I add the music, I should have said this. Before I add the music, I edit everything. So it's very, I get rid of all the stutters, all the, no, not all the stutters, but enough that it sounds clean but still natural. Take out any mistakes and mess ups and stuff. So I do all of that first, and then I'll put the music in.
Okay, so when you edit, because I guess I have done some editing in Pro Tools over the years, but not much. You do the ripple editing where, like, if you cut out a second, everything to the right just shifts to the...
For the most part, yeah.
Playhead.
Yeah, shuffle as they call it in Pro Tools.
Okay.
Yeah, that's mostly what I work in, yeah.
And so, like, for one of those 13-minute segments, like, how many edits are you making typically?
Oh, a lot.
A lot?
Yeah, and I cut out all the silence because I do have them on, like, multiple tracks, so I'll cut out all the silence from each track while the other person's talking, just so it sounds super clean, because I'm not in a really professional sounding room, so there is kind of a room noise in the background that I try to get out as much as I can. But, for a 13-minute segment, it'd probably be like, I genuinely don't even know how many edits, but a lot. Okay.
And so you bring up a good point here, and other podcasters and producers come up against this, is like when you have 2 microphones that are live in the same room, and there is some, like, room reverb and reflections and all that, you can do that. Like, for instance, when David Hooper's talking, you can literally cut out the guest's track. Like, so there's not that room tone. And then, and then vice versa. When the guest is talking, you cut David's mic out. But here's the thing I've noticed, and you might notice it too. When there's overlap, when they sort of talk at the same time or someone laughs, then you can hear the room a lot more, right?
Yeah. And there's not too many reflections. It's a pretty small room, but we have a lot of sound treatment up.
Okay.
Some, nothing expensive either. Just some, like, DIY sound panels we made with, like, some of that, like, Owens Corning, whatever, fiberglass stuff.
Cool.
Covered in fabric. So that gets rid of a lot of the reflections. We do have, like, an AC unit heating thing that in that I cannot get out of the room. It's just built in. So that's kind of the thing I'm always trying to avoid, that low little like in the background.
Got it. So that reminds me, I should ask you, what do you do any sort of cleanup of these tracks? Because a lot of podcast producers like myself, we, I use Isotope RX7 and I can clean up. I can like denoise it and deplosive. And
yeah.
Do you do any cleanup?
Yes. So after I go through and take out all the silence and do the edits, I will do X noise, which just comes with Pro Tools in the Audio Suite plugins. And I'll just X noise basically the whole thing and get rid of as much of that kind of room sound as I can. And it works pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, if it works well, it's good. But like if you use too much of it, then it
you got to be careful not to like get that weird digital artifacty sound going.
Yeah, that's another thing you should do to David Hooper one time. Like take his voice and just destroy it, and then like send him an email and say, "Hey David, I was working with some new plugins. I got a new sound for your voice. Do you like it?"
Yeah, what do you think of this?
Yeah,
I'll just take all the high end out. Make it
and
nice
just
and
like,
muffly.
Oh, just make it awful. And, see what he says.
I wonder if he would tell me. I wonder what the threshold is of how bad I can make it before he says something. Or if he's just too nice.
Well, him and I did an episode on my show here probably 3 months ago now. I don't know how long ago, but we actually he did a bunch of tests with different microphones, and he gave me all these sound clips. Like 10 different...
I recorded those.
Oh, you did?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was fun. But he, look, to hear nuances, you have to be monitoring properly, right? You can't just put in a pair of garbage earbuds and be like, ooh, I can hear a slight dip around 3.2 kilohertz.
Yeah. You're not going to hear very much.
Yeah. So, Anyway, you should do that to him. Send him some audio that's horrendous.
Oh, I think I will. This is a great idea.
Yeah, and I might do that too. I don't know. We should both do that. All right. So use the X Noise plugin. So what other plugins do you use?
So I just use the EQ that comes with Pro Tools, super simple, and I'll put that on basically every mic channel. Then following that, I've got Vox, which is a compressor from Waves, which I'll put also on the mic channels. And that's not like too heavy. It's a pretty light compression, but just to kind of, keep it steady. Mm-hmm. De-esser if I have to, though I very rarely have to. And then I have a parallel compressor that I'll use with both the mic channels too, and that is Waves Max Volume, and a bus limiter at the end, which is just the Maxim bus limiter, which if I'm not mistaken also just comes with Pro Tools. So lots of layers, so light on everything, but then layered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Rather than having one thing doing a lot of work.
Right. And so all the settings within all those plugins, how do you tweak all the settings for every single voice, like specifically?
No, so I've got a template that I use for basically everything, which I did not make alone. I've had a few people who have contributed to this template at the radio station. So the EQ stays basically the same all the time because I'm just EQing for, I'm always using the same mics. It's always in the same room. So EQ is almost always the same. The only time I'll tweak that is if sometimes, genuinely, it's almost always with women there's a lot of women have this kind of like 2K thing going on that which I also do. I always do it to my own voice, kind of get that out. But other than that, the EQ stays pretty stable. The compressor, I will change every time. I won't change many of the settings, but I'll change the level because I always want it to end up being around 3 dB compression. So just changing the ratio to get the ratio and threshold around to get what I want on that.
Got it.
The parallel compressor stays pretty stable. And then the bus limiter, I'll change the the release time will be the same. I'll change the threshold just to get the right amount of reduction on that. So I don't want it like slamming anything.
So when you say use the Waves max volume for parallel compression, so are you doing that in the plugin? Like you're in the plugin itself, the mix of dry to wet, you're putting at like 50% or whatever?
Yeah, it's, I should have checked this all before I left. I genuinely can't remember what the settings are at, but it's not too heavy. And then I don't even have it at 0 in Pro Tools. It's pulled down to like -8 after that. So it's super light. It's just to kind of give everything the most even volume I can.
Oh, I see. So you're actually like bussing all the voices to that compressor and then just adding a little bit of that to the overall mix.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Yeah. So you're not doing the, in the plugin, 50% wet, 50% dry and getting a mix that way. Yeah. Cool.
No, it's just in the mix. Yeah. The whole time.
Cool. All right. So now you said you have a template that you always use. So what's in the template?
Really, everything I just said. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the whole thing.
Okay. So you got all the tracks set up and the plugins on the tracks. And then you got
sorry. I guess I should have said that. Yeah. So
Okay.
you open it. You open it and there's 2 mic tracks ready to go, and I can always copy them and make 2 more if I do have more guests.
Right.
There's a music track, then my compressor. I have a reverb track in there, but for shows like Music Business Radio, I delete that. I mostly just use the reverb for when I'm making commercials. Then the parallel compression, and then my limiter.
Okay. And so when you have when David has 2 guests, everything you do is the same. There's just 3 tracks
Same.
now.
Yep.
Okay.
Just copy one of the mic tracks, make a new one. Everything else stays the same.
And so if there's 3 people, have you ever had more than 3 people?
I've had, we've had, how many did we have there? We've had 6 people, but they were using 4 microphones.
Wow.
And it went fine. Definitely not my preference though. I really try to avoid going more than 4 total.
So here's an interesting question. So there was probably one microphone that 2 people were sharing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you process that track with 2 different people, do you do it differently?
Yeah, I split them up. So I made 6 tracks, and then I just had to split the one track up into like 2 different, depending on which one of them was talking at the time, because one of them had a way lower voice than the other one, and it just I couldn't do the same processing for each one.
Yeah.
The only downside to having more people is it just slows editing down, so it just takes so much longer.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
You do what you got to do.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, some podcasters, usually new podcasters, they do record. They'll record 2 or 3 people on one track, or they'll stick a Blue Yeti in the middle of a table and just, let's all sit around and drink and talk, and it's like all on one track, and it's right.
I feel like that could get a little chaotic. Yeah.
Yeah, that gets rough real quick.
You're just kind of doing the old bluegrass thing where everyone's crowded around one microphone and like measuring your own distance to get the volume right.
That's another thing you should do to David Hooper next time. Just tell him you're gonna have to share a mic with your guest.
Yeah, we're just doing one mic. We're just doing one mic today.
Yeah, I'm trying out a new technique, David. Thanks.
We're going all natural. One mic, no processing.
Oh God. All right. Anyway, maybe when I come there, we'll do all this and we'll get it on video.
Yeah, I think we should. I think it'd be fun.
That's what we'll do. Okay. So you got your template, then you bring everything in, and then you chop it up and you mix it down. Now, as far as, the levels of the voices and the levels of the music, how do you just tell me about how you mix that? Do you're pushing faders up and down, right, to level the voices and the music and all that?
Yeah, so I usually record everything in pretty evenly at this point. I've got a good knack for that now. But I'd say it hits, somewhere around 0. Like, right where the yellow is in the Pro Tools. Trying to like make this as not specific to Pro Tools as I can.
Right.
But overall, as long as everything sounds even while I'm mixing it, I can work with that. And then at the very end is when I'm going into our database where we keep all of the stuff that will end up playing on air. That's when I have to actually worry about the volume. So as long as everything feels even and good, then it's at the very end I set my limiter, and it's really my volume coming out of Pro Tools that I'm worrying about the most, because that has to go into our radio system at a certain volume to be played on air. And it just goes in at, it peaks at 1 dB going into that system, but coming out of Pro Tools, it's not so much important, though I guess it would be if you didn't have that as a measure. So I don't know if this isn't entirely applicable to a lot of people, I guess, but.
Well, no, it's all good. So I have a question, because your final mix is going to be played on the radio, and your mix is going to be fed through probably a compressor and like the main limiter and compressor of the station itself, right?
Yes.
So
it is.
So how do you mix differently because of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I go so light on compression originally.
Got it.
Like I use a lot of different layers, but everything is so light because it is going to go through that super heavy on-air limiter. So I try to keep it all, like I don't want anything to be, just slammed, because it's already going to get more of that later. So I try to take that into account. But that being said, ours is a lot lighter than a lot of radio stations. Okay. At least that's what it sounds like to me.
And so when you're mixing in Pro Tools, how do you level the music under the voices? Like if David's like talking and saying, "Hey, welcome back to the show," and like, have you had to experiment a lot with how loud to play the music underneath because of how it's going to hit the limiter of the radio station?
Yeah, I have had to experiment, because I've definitely heard things back that I've done later. I've heard them on air and been like, oh, that was too loud, or that was too quiet, you can't even hear it now. So I think I've been working there for almost 4 years now, so I feel like it's more of a feeling at this point. But throughout the whole thing, I use the volume automation in Pro Tools, so I'm constantly riding it up and down depending on if there's vocals in the song, what David's talking about, how loud he's talking, how much attention I want there to be paid to the music in that moment.
Got it. And do you do any vocal automation on like the vocal tracks, David's voice or the guest voice?
Less automation on the vocals. I usually try to get a pretty good overall volume. And then there will be some spots if somebody is like kind of muttering or something that I will ride it up if need be, but there's much less on the vocals than there is in the music.
Actually, Barry just slipped me a note. It says she's going to need a couple things.
What couple things?
Barry, do you want to step up to the mic and everyone knows where this is going.
Everyone but me.
Except you, Stephanie. Barry, do you want to step up to the mic and tell Stephanie what she's going to need?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
Barry. Okay, but that really? Okay, anyway. See, Barry, he likes horses and mules. I don't know. Anyway.
I don't blame him. Who doesn't like horses? Mules are another story, but.
All right, so you edit it in there. Okay, then the final mix that you bounce out of Pro Tools, what format is that? Is that a 16-bit wave at 44.1?
Yes. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
1644.1 wave, stereo wave.
And then where do you send that? Does like the radio station have like this folder where you copy it or something? Yeah,
so we have this database that is also connected to my computer called the DAD, which I think stands for Digital Audio Database, though I could be wrong about that, to be honest with you.
Nice.
But it is very old. I don't think it's been updated since 2005, but it works. So I record it in real time into that system because for whatever reason, that's how that system works. And
wait, hold on. How do you record it into that system in real time?
It has its own audio card. So as I'm printing or bouncing it down in Pro Tools in real time, it is also being recorded into that system at the same time.
Okay.
Which is probably not the most convenient way that could be done, but it's how everything has been set up as long as I've worked there.
Right.
So I totally forgot where I was going with this. I'm so sorry.
No, that's it. That's what I asked. Where is your mix going? And you just
so it goes
explained
into this database that holds everything that plays on air, all of our songs, all of our commercials, all of the pre-produced interviews. Everything goes into this one database and then gets scheduled to play at a later time.
Mm.
And then I also save it to my computer so I can, upload it online, do all of that simultaneously.
Ah, right. So, okay, tell me about uploading it. How do you upload it online so it shows up on the website? How does that work?
So we, this past year, just started uploading them to a website called Mixcloud. And it's pretty great. It's super simple. So upload it up there, which you could just go directly to that website and find our profile and listen to everything there. But then in addition to that, the radio station has its website, lightning100.com. So after uploading it to Mixcloud, go to lightning100.com and I write a quick post about the show, then embed that Mixcloud kind of player. The way you have it on your website, it's just embedded with a post about it, just like your show is. And then schedule it to post on Sunday right before it airs on the radio station.
Ah, right. You got to schedule it to post at the exact right time.
Yes. I mean, in actuality, you could go listen to it at Mixcloud beforehand if you were following us on there because the file's already up. But I just like the post to coincide with the show. It seems neater that way.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's cool. So would you like to improve any aspects of your production process or equipment?
I would definitely like to find a way to get less room tone in my recording. And when I say room tone, like I said earlier, I don't really have a problem with reflections, but I do have that like AC unit kind of hum in the background. And It was funny because I was editing an episode today before I came on here with you, and it just bothers me so much because even with X noise, I can't quite get it all out without making the voice sound weird. So if I was to improve anything, I would really, really like to improve that somehow.
So you're in a commercial building, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So usually the problem with that is like you don't have a little switch on off switch on the wall for that fan,
right? Like I can't change the settings and I can't change the structure of the room I'm in.
But and first of all, even if you found a way to turn it off, the room might get really hot and nasty, so you don't know. But I don't know. Maybe if there's a maintenance guy in the building, you could ask him. Yeah.
I know we have a controller in our like unit in this building, but it controls the whole office and the other like 25 people I work with.
Shut it down. That's what I say.
I feel like there would be a mutiny if I did that.
Just go out into the main area and be like, "Hello, everyone. Can I have your attention, please, for the next hour and a half? No AC.
There will be no AC, no heat. Sorry.
Thank you.
Deal with it."
Thank you for your commitment to audio quality. We appreciate you.
So I feel like that's my biggest hurdle right now.
Yeah, so in the room I'm in now, I'm actually lucky that I have a couple vents in the ceiling, but they're very quiet and it's not a problem. But I don't know, like you probably can't do it, but maybe there's a way to like build like almost like attach like a mini baffle to the ceiling so that it sort of blocks the direct noise from the vent to come right into the mics.
I could definitely try to do that. It is also one of those things that, and I should ask somebody this sometime, I really wonder if anyone else notices it. or if it's just because I get in it so much when I'm editing that I hear it so clearly, but I wonder if other people do really at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because you're right. If you produce the audio well and everything is, everything can be heard well and the mix is good and all that, you're probably right? No one is going to be like, "Oh, why did they put that air conditioner in the background?"
Right. I mean, not to say that it definitely, I would still love for it to not be there, but I am probably being a little harder about it than I need to be.
Hey, wait, I got an idea. Just bring a piece of plywood in and just nail it to the ceiling and cover up the...
Yeah, I'm sure my boss would love that. We'll also just all sweat to death. That's the other problem, is it's just such a small room that like 3 people in there gets hot very quickly. So it's like I simultaneously want it to go away, but also I don't think I could live without it.
Yeah, well, they make those mini shotgun mics. I think one is called the 875R. I think it might be Audio-Technica. I forget. It's been so long, but it's like a mini shotgun. And so if you had, again, this is not the right solution. I'm just sort of throwing this out there because I thought of it. But it's like if you had little mini shotgun mics and then people got pretty close to them, that would probably help a little. It wouldn't eliminate it totally, but it might help, but it's not worth doing that.
I thought you were going to go in such a weirder direction with that. I was like, maybe if you took a mic and you recorded the sound and then reversed the phase, you could like cancel it out.
Dude.
I've never tried that before, but now I kind of want to. It probably wouldn't work, but...
Yeah, that's a rough one, because then you got the voices and
I know, that wouldn't work at all.
Yeah.
But I thought that's where you were going with that for some reason.
No, well, actually, so some people, what they do, so some people, what they do, and for some software, this is what you have to do. You basically record some of the room tone, like maybe 10, 20 seconds of just
pure room tone.
Pure room tone. Nobody's talking, just whatever, just pure room tone. And then you sort of tell the software, okay, this is it can noise map that, and it maps out the noise. And then when people start talking and you're recording the audio, it knows what the noise print or the noise map is, and then it can remove the noise without touching the voice. I remember SoundForge Pro has that, but in RX7, it doesn't need to do that. Like, it just scans the entire file with the person speaking and when they're not speaking, and then it knows when the person's speaking and when they're not, and it just creates that. Yeah, it just does it automatically.
Yeah, that's in theory what X Noise does. And like I said, it does you don't tell it the room tone. I'm saying it scans the whole thing.
Right.
And it does a pretty good job, but it's not perfect. But the room tone thing would be interesting. And what was the name of that does that?
Oh, SoundForge Pro. That's the name of some software I used to use when I was working on PCs.
Gotcha.
It is available for Mac, but it's horrible on Mac. It's it's a little stereo editor, actually. That's probably definitely not the right tool for you.
Yeah, but I am wondering now if there's plugins for Pro Tools that would do that. I should look into that.
Well, yeah, RX7, you can use those as plugins if you buy it, but that's expensive software. Yeah, there's other noise reduction, plugins. I haven't tried very many, but I don't know. I don't know if it would be that much better than the X Noise plugin you're using. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll shop around.
All right. So when you record your voice for commercials,
Yes.
How do you do that?
Same way, really. I mean, I take an RE20, just read the script in front of me, and do it directly into Pro Tools through the Mbox.
Cool. And in your office?
In my office, yeah.
Now, in your office, one thing I've noticed that helps actually, like because if you have a vent in the ceiling, the vent is in the ceiling, right, for the air?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it in a corner or is it right in the middle?
It is in a corner.
Okay. So if you actually point the mic away from that corner, you will pick up less of that.
That's so
noise.
Funny because that sounds so obvious and yet had not occurred to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. Like where the mic is in the room and the direction it's pointed oh my God, makes a huge difference in recording. And I know this from music production because, I mean, you could have a mic on a drum set. You could move it like 3 degrees to the right and it's like the sound changed. And it's like, oh my God, sounds better now. So
yeah, that's a really, because David, the way where he usually sits, his mic is sort of facing that vent. So I wonder, just turning him would help.
There you go. If he directly faced the noise so that the mic was pointing away from
right. Well, that's usually the way the guest faces. So, but maybe I could get him like at least like a 90-degree angle from it at the very least.
Yeah, I think that would help. It definitely would help to some degree. I don't know how much.
Yeah, that is a shamefully obvious solution that I have not tried.
Yeah, well.
We get stuck in our ways, you know?
Right. So, okay. So you record your voice on, and you just same post-production, same effects and everything?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'll have reverb on the commercials. If I'm doing a commercial, I'll have reverb on it, but very light.
Wait, so why reverb though?
Just to give it just gives it a more dimension.
Mm.
I mean, it's only like 75 milliseconds. It's so short, but it is, it just does give it a little more dimension, makes it a little like thicker because there is almost always music in the background for commercials. So just having that extra level of dimension makes the voice stand out more.
Got it. So wait, you said 75 milliseconds. Is it a reverb or is it a delay?
I guess that would qualify as a delay, wouldn't it?
Okay. Well,
I just use a reverb plugin.
well, it depends what it sounds like, and it depends how many reflections. I mean, one delay is just like you could take my voice and delay it 75 milliseconds, and it would almost be like a doubler effect.
Right. No, it is a reverb. Yeah.
So maybe it has a pre-delay of 75 milliseconds.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah. So pre-delay, what that means for all the listeners is that's when you're talking about a reverb. Pre-delay is the amount of time from when I say something to when the reverb of what I said actually plays. So for the first 75 milliseconds, there's no reverb. And then there's reverb after that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And see, pre-delay, that's a really good, I learned that a while ago. That's a great way to make a voice stand out above music. It just, it's like magic.
It really just adds like a whole other layer of dimension to it.
Yeah. I've used, and even on like snare drums and stuff, like even music, you can, I remember my friend was mixing this thing at his house and I went there and this is like, it's either right after I came back from New York working in the studios or while I was still working in New York. And he was mixing this track and it was sounding good. And I was like, hey, what do you got, reverb you got in the snare? And he told me, and then he's like, I said, yeah, you know, how much pre-delay? He's like, oh no, it's on 0 pre-delay. And I was like, oh, put it up to like 30, 40 milliseconds pre-delay. And he switched it and then he played it and it was like, whoa, dude, really?
Changes everything.
Yeah, it was like, dude. That's when we were listening to Super Unknown by Soundgarden. We were playing a couple songs off Super Unknown and being like, man, this is so cool.
I want everything to sound like this.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's how you do your voiceovers and stuff. So, all right. So you're an employee of the station, right?
Yes, I am.
So so you're working on other things, I presume?
Yeah. So, you know, most of my time I'm doing commercials. We make almost all of them in-house there. So doing that a lot of the day, doing music business radio and recording other bands that come around the station, working on other interviews that are going to play on air, plus some other non-audio things that fall under my job description.
So I got to ask you about when these bands come in and you record them, how are you literally bringing in drums and, you know, bass guitars?
No. It's nothing like that. I mean, most of the time when they come in, they just play live on air.
Like acoustic or something?
Yeah, usually acoustic.
Okay.
Sometimes they bring in their drum sets, but we discourage that. Mostly because of the amount of room we have. It's very small.
Wait, you don't do that in your office too, do you?
No, sometimes.
Oh, sometimes. Well, if it's just a guy with a guitar, you can do it, yeah.
Yeah. I think I've had some pretty crazy setups in there though. I think like a year ago, this was for it wasn't for Music Business Radio. I don't quite remember why we were doing it in there, but it was, I think, 2 guitars, keys, and like 3 vocals.
Huh.
And then somebody had like a little snare drum, something along the lines of a snare drum, like in their lap.
Right.
And this is a small room. It was a hoot, I guess you could say. But it was fun. I mean, I kind of had to rely on a lot of room sharing mics, getting a lot of the sound just in the room because, again, I only had 4 mics. Had to make it work.
Holy cow, you only had 4 mics. Oh, man, yeah, you got to plan that out, and oh, my God.
Yeah, it was fun, though. You know, it's an adventure.
Wow.
But for the most part, if I'm doing something in my office, it's usually like, 1 acoustic guitar and 1 person singing, maybe 2 guitars, and keep it simple.
So where did you go to school to learn audio engineering?
I did. I went to Belmont University here in Nashville.
That's cool. So I don't know. Like, I think anyone who's listening, who's producing podcasts and stuff, like, I don't know. I think it's good to know that some radio stations still have positions where people do what you're doing, producing different types of audio and stuff.
Yeah, it's really fun. You know, when I went to school to study audio, I think I kind of went in with the same idea that everyone does. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to work in a recording studio. And at some point I realized that I didn't really want to work in a recording studio for different reasons, but stumbling into radio was sort of the best thing to happen to me. It fits so much better for me. I love it.
That's awesome. Plus you get to work with, you know who.
You know who. David Hooper's bloopers.
David Hooper's bloopers. All right. Well, Stephanie Lesher, this has been really great. I really appreciate you chatting with me on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Right? This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
this was great.
The way we end it, Stephanie, is we all yell, "Sound great."
Okay.
At the end. So are you able to yell where you are?
I can yell, yes.
Okay,
but
good.
Are you going to count me in?
Yes, I'll tell you when. And so thank you, everyone, for listening. And wherever you are, I don't care if you're jogging down a trail or in your car or in the supermarket, you need to yell "Sound great" with us at the end, okay? So thanks, everybody. All right, go. Sound great!
Yeah, oh yeah. No way. You crazy? Yeah, oh yeah.
Walk away from me where and you can't play that part so well. What do you playing out on me now? You like to lose control where it's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some empathy. You change your attitude where you say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. Gave up on me where some chance you gave me gave away. You say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. I want you to know you were ever with me. So I gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold their meaning. And does it mean it's still the same? You're pushing spotlight. Oh yeah,